Hi everyone, my name is Pragna Nidumolu and I'm the founder of EcoTeens, an initiative that helps raise awareness of climate change and how teens can come together across the globe to do their part in making this world a greener place for them and future generations to live in. As a part of EcoTeens, we launched a podcast called The Green Stories to bring diverse perspectives on sustainability and what we all can do as global citizens to address climate change. Today, we have a very special guest in this episode, Katie Thompson Levey.
Hi, good to be
Katie,
here.
great to have you. Katie is the Vice President of Public Affairs at PYXERA Global. She designs communications and press strategies to empower nonprofits and corporations that are impacting positive social change through their programming and their business. In addition, Katie led the design and implementation of PYXERA Global Story Sharing package. This empowers companies and individuals to share their stories of leadership, volunteerism, and change through multimedia. Through PYXERA Global, Katie founded the nonprofit communications consultancy, Wake Up for Good, where she worked with organizations including American Diabetes Association, Smithsonian Institution, Catch a Fire, and SaveUp.com. Prior to that, Katie managed business development at Carrot, one of the country's top 10 media and advertising agencies. There, she worked closely with the team of communication mavericks to develop strategies that led to new accounts, including the Home Depot, Disney, and Nokia. That's a very impressive resume.
Thanks.
It's great to have you here. So, jumping into the questions, what inspired you to first get into sustainability?
It's interesting you can read off my resume from long ago before I even remember it at this point, but I was working for a media agency called Cara, which was a great place. I learned a lot about communications working with groups like Home Depot, Disney, Nokia, and others. And I was looking for more purpose in my work, and I was looking for something beyond for-profit. So I paused and I said, I'm gonna stop this. And I walked away from that job, really not knowing what I was going to do next, only to discover the field of what was then corporate responsibility and is now really morphing into sustainability. And was really motivated that there was a community and an industry of individuals who were really working to change the world and change how companies engage in the world.
That's really interesting that's how you got into sustainability, because I've heard many different ways, and it's very true that there's a big community in this field.
Yeah, it's growing. Most especially in the last 5 years, I'd say it's gotten even bigger and stronger.
Mm-hmm. So how important do you think it is in the modern day?
I'd say it's non-negotiable for a lot of companies and organizations, because if they don't keep in mind sustainability and sustainable practices, whether it's their waste emissions or how their products are being made or how they're treating their employees or their presence in communities in general, in the communities in which they operate, they somewhat lose what's called their social license to operate. They lose basically credibility, they lose trust. So to ignore that, I would imagine, is at a company's own peril.
I totally agree. And building off of that, do you think we, like as a nation, are doing a good job of being sustainable? And if not, what can we do to improve?
I think we are making an effort to move in that direction, and it's very difficult to turn the helm of a ship when it's such an enormous ship. So there's been much more emphasis in the last 2 years on climate change. And I think that's made a difference to really go further. I think we need more companies to really translate their commitments to go to net zero into concrete plans and actions, which many companies are, but more companies need to do. And it's hard. It's hard to set that commitment. Well, it's not hard to set that commitment, but it's hard to figure out how to fulfill that commitment. So if you see a company saying, we're going to go net zero by 2030 or 2050, or we're going to use all recyclables by recyclable material by 2030 or 2040, to really change that in your operations and your supply chain, it's not easy.
That's very interesting, and I totally agree with that, that it's important for companies as well to think of those things. Um, I mentioned that you're an employee at PYXERA. Can you explain a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, PYXERA Global is, we're a nonprofit organization, and we work with governments as well as for-profit companies with the mission of bringing together government, nonprofit, and private sector companies to work together to solve social issues, and increasingly social and environmental issues. So we don't believe any one sector can solve some of these big thorny issues on their own. So we work with large scale agencies, companies, and nonprofits around the world to bring them together on issues like food security or the digital divide, who has access to digital technology, who doesn't, circular economy, and those type of areas.
That's really interesting, and I think it's really important to have organizations like that around to help push this forward, because at the moment, there's not as many as there should be. And I
Yeah.
think that's really commendable.
Well, thank you. Yes, we've seen a lot of change in the last 8 years or so. When we first started out, we had shifted our mission a ways back, about a decade back, and we had the feedback, oh, that seems a little ambitious. And now we're re-looking at our mission, and it feels just in line with the times.
That's really nice. Do you have any specific advice for people trying to be more sustainable? Like, how can people be sustainable in their everyday lives? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say there are a couple of levels. One is just the very practical, and it's your audience may already be doing it, but it's the behavioral, and it's encouraging the people around you on the behavioral. So when we say use less plastic and carry your bags to the store, sometimes that's can be a pain in the butt, but do it. When we look at what kind of cars we buy, like really looking at what's the gas usage on the car, and making kind of some of the day-to-day choices, whether it's in the things that we buy or the products and materials that we use, and stretching further, even if it might be a little harder, or if it's feasible, a little more expensive. And I know that's not feasible for everybody, but take that extra step to use less, consume less, buy products that do that type of thing. And then kind of a step higher is your parents, your friends, your teachers, your community, encouraging them to do so, because behavioral change really does start like with the individual and then grows out.
And how do you personally stay sustainable?
Just the ways I mentioned, we try to reuse as little as possible. Not reuse as little as possible, reuse as much as possible. We try to walk more. I mean, I know it's very simple. We try to walk up and down the stairs rather than using the elevator. We try to recycle our books and give them back to the community. We try to eat less, to consume less, because we don't really need as much as we think we do. And when I say we, I mean my household. And doing those little behavioral changes has really influenced how I look at my career in sustainability. And as we look at these broader stroke conversations with companies on material flows and waste and what have you, it's just more grounded. It's more informed in everyday realities.
Wow. And I really agree with that. And I think people should start believing that it's not just even people think that if they don't do something, it's not going to matter as much because they're just one person, but everyone's having the same mentality. And so as a group, we're not making as much of an effort as we could if we did have that mentality. So I think that's
yeah, I just suggest it's even a little bit more than that, because I used to think like that as well. I'm one person like, okay, these plastic bags, is it really going to make a difference? But the act of doing it differently has taught me so much that it's informed my perspective and it's colored a lot of other areas of my life. So I'd say, especially if you're, I don't know the age of your audience, but if you're like in the teenage range, I would imagine, or any age really, but having that experience and like learning to live that differently will inform more macro decisions for your life to come.
Yeah, I agree. So finally, my last question, what is your message to the community?
Oh goodness, so much pressure. Um, uh, it's not whatnot. And also life is short, make it count. It moves quickly and your decisions matter. The decisions on the individual level, I believe, make a big impact on the macro level. And that's not always easy to see, but it makes a difference. And especially if you start out with an idea and you keep building and building and building over time, you'd be surprised as to how much traction you can gain. And you might not see that in the beginning.
That's a really inspiring thing, and I think that's a great thing to live off of,
Yeah.
that your own actions can impact so many things without you realizing.
Yeah. And it's easy to get caught up in the news and things looking pretty grim. And there's a whole other side of the universe and the world that is there for you. And you have a choice in terms of which reality you live in. So for me, I try to choose integrity in my actions and focusing on the things I can control, which is my own actions.
That's really important. Thank you so much for joining us today, and it was really such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank
See you in the
you.
next one.
All right, take care.